The Forgotten Mermaid, or Lost Hearts May Be Redeemed by Gregga J. Johnn. 3. Captain Bryce Deleuze strolled across the deck of his tiny ship, the Pursuit. Well, she wasn't really tiny when compared with a dinghy or a single-man sailboat, but when compared with other merchant ships, and especially the looming threat of pirate ships, tiny indeed she was. He loved his little ship, as with great effort he was perfectly capable of handling her on his own. Granted, alone was unwise and clumsy, but as he was a singularly independent man that did not like to rely upon others for assistance, the manageability suited him well. It was sunrise on the second day in this port town, and hopefully his last. He always found that the worst thing about port towns were the people in them, and this town had proven to be the same, but for a random meeting. Bryce hoped he would not regret granting passage to the odd missionary preacher and his wife. He also hoped the young sailor who had shown interest in talking to him further about his quest might actually follow the wind and find him here. His hopes and trust in the wind served him well this morning. A small donkey cart was being driven down to the quiet docks in the misty dawn. Bryce considered the packages that caused the cart its heaviness through his spyglass. He couldn't see what belaboured the beast in his pulling, but recognized the driver sitting atop the cart along with the older woman. The donkey pulled up alongside Bryce's ship, and he was hailed by the young sailor who inquired of his findability the day before. "Ho there, Captain Deleuze, I hear you is looking for a crew." "I am," the captain nodded, and tipped his hat to the crone beside the boy. "Well, me and I is wondering if you might consider a deal with us." "A boy and an old woman." Bryce cleared his throat uncomfortably, as the air was still slicing cold. "My ship may be small, but I should consider a slightly more hearty fare of frame than either of you appear to bring." The old lady stood and precariously stepped backward down from the cart with a grab on her son's surprisingly sturdy arm. She smiled with a partly toothless grin and hobbled closer to the dock's edge and bowed, admitting, "I know we don't seem like much, but unfortunately we are more trouble than we seem." Bryce snickered to himself, unsure if the woman intended to sell herself so poorly. "Let me explain a little more, if I may." She bowed again. Bryce was quite amused. "By all means, do as you will." The woman hobbled toward the back of the cart and lifted the edge of a heavy blanket that covered their wares. The unconscious faces of two burly men snored heavily in the sudden cold exposure. "These me boys, you see, sir." "Really?" The captain loathed the practice of Shanghai. "It's true." The boy accompanying her sprang down from the cart and implored him. "Me brothers, you see, well, they're in a spot of trouble with the law in this here's town. They're proud men who'd rather see themselves hung than admit they's were looking too highly at the magistrate's daughters." The boy faltered and looked quite distraught. The woman took up the plea. "We all need to disappear, as it were, sir." She gestured to the cart that Bryce could now tell held 2 large men, a couple of bags, and a few barrels to spare. "This is all I have in the whole world, and it's meagre pickings. But if I was to lose me sons like the magistrate has threatened, then, as you can see, I would have but barely a morsel left and little life to go with it." To put the seal on the deal, she added, "He'll steal my boy here too for his houseboy, and leave me with nothing." "Huh," was all Bryce could respond before they were all interrupted by the hearty "Ho there!" of the preacher, as he and his wife carefully descended the steps down the quay. "We're here quite early," he babbled on. "I know you said you leave at noon, but I do like to be well prepared, and I wouldn't want you to be absent should you change your mind early." The missionaries nodded their greeting a little awkwardly as they joined the donkey cart, mother and boy, on the dock. There was a minor pause as they all waited in the early sun. "Well then, all aboard," said the captain, nodding to the hopeful woman. He gestured to the healthy missionary couple. "You wouldn't mind assisting my cook with her packages now, would you? All hands on deck on this tiny vessel." "Righty-ho!" exclaimed the preacher, and set his hands to dragging the first of the unconscious bodies up the gangplank with the young boy's help. "How exciting! Adventure be upon us, my dear," he said to his wife. "Yes, darling. What a blessing to be so abundantly filled with company." Nodding to the woman, the missionary lady deftly tossed her bag over one shoulder, dragged her trunk behind, and then pulled a basket onto her hip, following the awkward parade up the plank to their new home. Bryce laughed at the sight and swung down on one of his ropes to the dock and helped unhitch the donkey. "We'll have to leave the cart behind, my lady." He winked at the hobbling woman. But we can keep your donkey in work and feed while there are so few of us aboard, and so full an abundance of provision." They continued their back and forth plank walk until all packages were aboard and stowed in appropriate shelves and hammocks. The youngest boy blinked around at the full storeroom below deck, amazed at their good fortune in stumbling upon one so wealthy. "Blimey! You got a big storehouse down here, sir, and it's so full." "Never underestimate what you see above water with only your eyes, son." The captain patted the boy's shoulder. "That's what I always say," agreed the preacher, as he wrestled the last barrel into place. "But I agree with the boy, even with good estimation. You do surprise, sir." "We shall all get to know each other too well soon enough." Bryce moved to return topside. No need to interrogate now. He continued partially to himself as the others followed him up. "We've nothing but each other, this small vessel, and the wild seas about us for a while now." Thus, as the sun began to burn off the morning mist, and the magistrate blinked himself awake, determined to put an end to the lives of the dread ruffians who dared speak to his lady daughters, the Pursuit sailed out of the harbour under the keen eye of Captain Deleuze, with the aid of an eager, meagre, motley crew. The burly brothers below deck continued their temporary snoring in swinging hammocks, and far away the siren also breathed heavily in her slumber, still dreaming of what songs she might sing to call her next meal.